The snow crunched under Jack and Leo's boots, their breath fogging in the bitter air of the park. A walk to clear their heads. That's all it was supposed to be. Then, a faint whimper cut through the silence, sharp and desperate, like a plea from the wild. They froze, scanning the white expanse. There, half buried in a drift, lay a dog, motionless, fur matted with ice, an animal abandoned to the cold. Jack's heart sank. He'd always had a soft spot for strays. But as they knelt closer, Leo's hand shot up, his voice a choked gasp. "Jack, look!" Beneath the dog, curled tight against her side, was a small figure. A child, pale and still, her tiny body shielded by the animal's warmth. The dog's eyes flickered, weary but fierce, guarding her secret. Jack's pulse raced. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a story unfolding in the snow, one that would change everything. What happened next would test their courage. The snow seemed to thicken around Jack and Leo, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The sight of the child, Emma, they'd later learn, curled beneath the dog's trembling body, hit them like a punch to the gut. Her lips were blue, her tiny frame shivering faintly, but the dog, that brave, battered animal, hadn't budged. Its warmth was the only thing keeping her alive. Jack fumbled for his phone, his fingers numb from cold and panic. Come on," he muttered, dialing 911. The operator's voice was calm, almost too calm. As Jack stammered out their location, his eyes locked on Emma's pale face. "Hypothermia," the operator said. "Keep her warm. Help's on the way." But time was a thief, and every second felt stolen. Leo, meanwhile, was already moving. He scooped the dog into his arms, its frail body heavier than it looked, like it carried the weight of its own story. The animal whimpered softly, too weak to resist, its matted fur cold against Leo's jacket. "Hang in there, buddy," he whispered, half to the dog, half to himself. The nearest vet clinic was a mile away, through snow-packed streets. But Leo didn't hesitate. He ran, boots slipping, heart pounding, the dog's shallow breaths urging him on. He could still see Jack in his mind, kneeling beside Emma, wrapping her in his coat, talking to her softly like she could hear him. "You're gonna be okay, kid. You've got a guardian angel here." Back at the park, Jack's world narrowed to the sound of distant sirens. He didn't know Emma, didn't know her story, but he felt the weight of her life in his hands. The dog had shielded her, a silent act of sacrifice that made Jack's throat tighten. He brushed snow from her face, his fingers trembling, and whispered, "Hold on, Emma, just hold on." The cold bit at his knees, but he stayed put, his coat draped over her small frame. The dog's warmth had saved her this long, but now it was up to them. The paramedics arrived in a blur of red lights and urgent voices, their boots crunching as they rushed to Emma. "Severe hypothermia," one said, checking her. "Pulse. She's stable, but it's bad." They lifted her onto a stretcher, and Jack felt a strange mix of relief and dread. She was alive, but barely. At the vet clinic, Leo burst through the doors, the dog limp in his arms. "Please," he gasped. "This animal's a hero." The vet, a woman with steady hands and a no-nonsense look, took one glance and sprang into action. The dog, malnourished, frostbitten, with a gash on its leg, was a fighter. "Looks like she's been through hell," the vet said, hooking up an IV. "But she's got a chance." Leo leaned against the wall, catching his breath, his mind racing back to the park. He thought of Emma, of Jack, of the fragile thread connecting them all. The dog's eyes, dull but defiant, stayed with him. This wasn't just a rescue. It was something bigger, something that tied them to this animal in ways they couldn't yet understand. As the ambulance sped Emma to the hospital and the vet worked to save the dog, Jack and Leo were left with the same unspoken question. Would they pull through? The answer hung in the air. as delicate and uncertain as the snow still falling outside. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic, but to Emma's parents it was the scent of hope. Samantha sat by her daughter's bed, her hand clutching Emma's small fingers, still cold despite the blankets. Hours ago they'd been frantic, scouring the snowy park where Emma had vanished during a game of hide-and-seek. Now, she was here, her cheeks slowly regaining color, her chest rising with steady breaths. The doctors called it a miracle. Severe hypothermia should have taken her, but an animal, a stray dog, had wrapped itself around her, a living shield against the cold. Samantha's eyes welled up, not just for Emma, but for the creature that had saved her. She'd never been one for pets, always thought they were too much trouble. But this was a story that cracked her heart wide open. Emma stirred, her eyelids fluttering like moth wings. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice fragile but clear. Samantha's breath caught, a sob and a laugh tangled together. "I'm here, baby," she said, brushing Emma's hair back. Her dad, Tom, stood by the window, his broad shoulders shaking as he turned to hide his tears. The room felt alive with relief, but Emma's first question wasn't about herself. "Where's the dog?" she asked, her voice urgent, eyes wide with a memory only she understood. Samantha exchanged a glance with Tom. They didn't know much, just what the paramedics had relayed. 2 guys, a dog, a rescue in the snow. But Emma's insistence lit something in them. This wasn't just gratitude. It was a bond forged in silence, in survival. Jack and Leo, still shaken from the day's events, had been calling around, piecing together the story. They learned the dog was at a vet clinic, recovering but alone, no collar or chip to trace. The vet had named her Nova, a nod to a new beginning. But she was a stray, destined for a shelter unless someone claimed her. Jack, nursing a coffee that had gone cold, felt a tug in his chest. "That dog's no ordinary stray," he told Leo, who nodded, still seeing Nova's weary eyes in his mind. They'd both felt it, something profound in that animal's quiet courage. They wanted to do more, to make sure Nova wasn't forgotten. So they reached out to the hospital, hoping to connect the dots. When Samantha heard about Nova, her practicality wavered. She'd always said no to pets, citing mess and chaos, but this dog had saved her daughter. Tom, usually the quiet one, spoke up. "We owe her, Sam. Emma's asking for her." The idea of bringing Nova into their lives felt daunting but right. They called the vet, learning Nova was healing, malnourished, a gash on her leg, but fighting hard. Emma, still weak, lit up at the news. "She stayed with me," she said softly, as if recalling a secret shared in the snow. "She was warm." Samantha felt a lump in her throat, picturing the scene. Her daughter, alone, and an animal choosing to stay. The hospital room buzzed with a new energy as plans took shape. Emma's questions about Nova grew insistent, her small voice carrying a strength that surprised everyone. Samantha and Tom started to see it. A path forward, not just for Emma, but for the dog who'd changed everything. But would they take the next step? The thought lingered, as delicate as the first signs of spring outside the hospital window. Samantha stood in the vet clinic's waiting room, her palms sweaty despite the cool air. She'd never imagined herself here, picking up a dog, a stray no less. But Emma's voice, small yet fierce, echoed in her mind. "We can't leave her, Mom. She's mine." Nova, the animal who'd shielded Emma from the snow's cruel bite, was more than a pet now. She was a piece of their story, a thread woven into their lives by chance and courage. The vet led Samantha to a small room where Nova lay on a blanket, her fur patchy but cleaner, her eyes brighter than the day Leo carried her in. When Nova's tail thumped softly, Samantha's heart did a little flip. "All right, girl," she whispered, half laughing at herself. "Let's see what you've got in store for us." The drive home was quiet. Nova curled up in the back seat, her head resting on Emma's lap. Emma, still pale from her hospital stay, stroked Nova's ears, whispering secrets only they understood. Samantha glanced in the rearview mirror, catching the way Emma's face softened, her nightmares seemingly held at bay by the dog's steady breathing. Tom, sitting shotgun, cracked a smile. "Never thought I'd be a dog, Dad," he said, his voice light but his eyes misty. Samantha chuckled, but inside, she felt a shift. She'd always seen pets as chaos, fur on the couch, messes to clean. But Nova, this animal was different, a quiet force that had already changed them. At home, Nova's arrival was like a spark in a dim room. Emma, who'd been withdrawing since the ordeal, started to bloom again. She'd giggle when Nova chased a squeaky toy, her laughter cutting through the house like sunlight. One night, Samantha found Emma asleep on the couch, Nova sprawled across her, both of them snoring softly. It was the first time Emma hadn't woken up screaming. Samantha's throat tightened. This dog, this rescue, was doing what no therapy session could. She started to see the world through Nova's eyes, instinctive, loyal, unafraid to love despite the scars. It made her rethink everything, from the way she'd dismissed strays to the walls she'd built around her own heart. Nova, too, seemed to come alive. The gash on her leg was healing, and her ribs were less stark under her fur. She'd bound after Emma in the backyard, her clumsy gallop drawing laughs from Tom, who'd taken to sneaking her bits of bacon. "Don't tell your mom," he'd wink at Emma, who'd grin like she was in on the best secret. The family started joining local animal adoption events, Emma clutching Nova's leash, her shy voice growing bolder as she shared their story. Samantha watched, amazed, as strangers teared up, moved by the bond between a girl and her four-legged savior. It wasn't just Emma and Nova healing, it was all of them, finding new purpose in this unexpected family. The house felt fuller, not just with Nova's playful barks, but with something deeper, a sense of rebirth. Samantha, once skeptical of strays, now saw every animal as a potential hero. Emma, once haunted by the cold, found warmth in Nova's presence. But their story was spreading, touching others beyond their little home. What would it mean for the world to hear it? The video started as a quiet post on a local community page, a shaky clip of Emma and Nova at an adoption event, Emma's small voice telling their story. Samantha hadn't expected much, just a way to thank the animal who'd saved her daughter. But by morning, the post had exploded, shared across platforms, racking up views from strangers who left comments like, "This is why we need to rescue strays," and "I'm crying. Nova's a hero." The story of a dog shielding a child in the snow hit like a spark in dry grass, spreading far beyond their small town. Samantha watched the numbers climb, her coffee going cold as she read messages from people inspired to adopt, to volunteer, to see animals differently. It wasn't just a story anymore, it was a movement. Emma, barely 8, became an unexpected advocate. At a local shelter event, she stood on a makeshift stage, Nova at her side, her voice trembling but clear. "She didn't have a home, but she saved me," Emma said, her hand resting on Nova's head. The crowd hushed, some wiping tears, others nodding as if they too felt the weight of that snowy day. Nova, her fur now glossy, seemed to understand, her eyes scanning the faces like she was guarding them all. Samantha stood off stage, her heart swelling. She'd never been one for public displays, but watching her daughter and this animal, this rescue, touch so many lives cracked something open in her. Even Tom, the quiet one, started joking about needing a bigger house for all the strays they might end up taking in. The message spread like ripples in a pond. Shelters reported a surge in adoption inquiries, with people citing Emma and Nova's story as their push. Jack and Leo, the two friends who'd stumbled into this miracle, found themselves fielding calls from local news. Their simple walk in the park, now a tale of heroism. Sometimes, heroes walk on four legs, Leo said in one interview, half laughing, half choked up. The phrase stuck, popping up on t-shirts, hashtags, even a mural at the vet clinic where Nova had been saved. It wasn't just about one dog or one girl. It was about the silent bonds that tie us to the wild, to the instinct to protect, to love, even when the world feels cold. Emma and Nova kept showing up, at fairs, school talks, adoption drives, each appearance cementing their story's legacy. Emma's nightmares had faded, replaced by a quiet confidence, her hand always finding Nova's fur when the crowds got big. Samantha watched them, marveling at how a moment in the snow had reshaped their lives and countless others. The bond born that day wasn't just a rescue, it was a reminder of what's possible when compassion meets courage. A metaphor took root in her mind. These connections, forged in silence and survival, were like heartbeats echoing through time. But how far could this ripple go? The world was listening, and Emma and Nova weren't done speaking. As the snow settled that day, it left behind more than footprints. It carved a story into the hearts of everyone it touched. Emma and Nova, bound by a silent act of courage, remind us that the wild holds lessons we're only beginning to understand. What does it mean to protect someone, to stand guard when the world turns cold? Have you ever felt a connection so deep, it changed how you see the world? Maybe it was an animal, a moment, a rescue that stayed with you. Stories like this don't just end, they echo like a heartbeat in the quiet. Our channel's full of them, tales of unlikely heroes, like the wolf who saved a hiker or the elephant who never forgot her keeper. Each one's a call to feel, to reflect, to act. So, what's your story? Drop it in the comments, share this video, and let's keep these bonds alive. Subscribe and hit the bell. Don't miss the next tale that'll make your heart skip a beat.